Morning, Trainiacs. Just got done with a little swim, and this isn't new news. This has been out for a while, but Lionel Sanders injured, out, kaputs for quite a while. What is new is that he finally addressed it on his YouTube channel, and I've been waiting for him to talk about it before I started coming up with some commentary of things that we could take away from this really unfortunate situation Lionel's in. And do I think that he could come back? Can he still get to Kona, if not this year, but potentially win in the future? Let's ride. Okay, so let's get into analyzing whether You always throw me off, Pete. Come on. So let's get into whether or not Lionel Sanders can come back. Now, a few disclaimers about this. Number one, I haven't talked to Lionel. I haven't talked to anyone from Team Lionel about this. A lot of this is just speculation and me making some inferences from the video that he did that we'll link to at the end of the video, and just things that I know about injuries like this, what we can see from other athletes that have gone through something similar. We're going to do it in three parts. Number one, what actually causes injuries like this? What do you have to be aware of that can be a likely cause of stress fractures and things like this? Number two, what is the recovery process? Number three, can he come back? Do I think he will make it to Kona this year? So number one, really quickly, how do things like this happen and what do we need to be aware of? Well, quite often, stress fractures are not a result of a fall itself, of a movement itself where you feel, oh, that happened. Like, it's kind of like when you throw your back out from sneezing. It's not the sneeze that threw your back out. It's a series of things that weaken an area leading up to it. And in the case of stress fractures, quite often, it's because of overtraining or improper nutrition. Now, is this what happened with Lionel? Well, he did mention that he potentially might have had some overtraining issues. He also mentioned that he had a bit of a low vitamin D issue, which does end up leading to lack of recovery. And he did play around a lot with his nutrition last year. So when you end up doing that, if you end up digging yourself into a hole, hormones and the ability to recover doesn't just come back on its own. You need to spend a lot of time fixing it. Like myself, 2017 was the year that I got overtrained, and still here we are a year and a half later, and when I do my hormone panels, my hormones are still low, and I need to be very cautious of the amount of training that I do. It doesn't just come around on its own. So what do we do as Trainiacs? Well, I'm a big believer that on teamtrainiac.com that you train very, very lightly. Instead of building you up to the most amount of fitness you can get to your next race, we go fairly gently and keep you away from building too much fatigue, and that allows you to be fast over the course of many years because you can consistently do little bits of work instead of tons of work, opening up the door for illness and injury. Truck outside. Now, the healing process for this. Lionel himself says that the doctor's recommended healing time is about 12 weeks of very, very light training. Jan Frodeno had a stress fracture at right mid-September, and he just did his first race, which wasn't really even a terribly competitive race, 8 months later. Ben Hoffman had a stress fracture right at the beginning of October, and he started racing about 6 months later. So from the time that an injury happens until you can comfortably race again, we're talking anywhere from 5 to 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 months. Now, a bigger issue is not the injury itself, it's how do you come back from that injury if it was overtraining or a nutritional problem that led to it. Because as I mentioned, what ends up happening is your ability to recover as you start loading on training ends up becoming quite low. And that's why you'll often see that athletes might go and be really fit. And then because pros have to dance that line between absolute peak performance and not being healthy, they might get to that peak performance level, and then the first injury that they get is kind of an indication of overtraining, and you see some athletes that never really come back from it because they went too deep to get that peak level of fitness. So the injury itself, yeah, Lionel can come back within a matter of several months, but if it was overtraining or nutritional issues, that's something that sometimes takes years to overcome. Now, the question here, and the title of this video, is coming back from the injury. Can Lionel come back, A, to be competitive again, B, to make Kona this year? To be competitive again, yes, absolutely. That's really no question. Ben Hoffman did it, came back, got on the podium at Half Ironman Campeche, then went on to win Full Ironman South Africa. Jan Frodeno, we don't necessarily know because we haven't really seen him be tested yet, but people come back from injury all the time. Holly Lawrence is out there killing it right now after a serious fracture. A couple of the bigger questions, though, are can he make it to Kona? That is a harder question. 12 weeks of recovery places him in a situation where he can't really train purposefully until the beginning of July, which then gives him 6 weeks to train for Full Ironman Mont Tremblant, which is the last place that he could potentially qualify for this year's Kona. 6 weeks is not a lot of time to prepare for a full Ironman. If you just think about the timeline of how long it took Ben Hoffman to come back to be competitive and win Full Ironman South Africa, we see that he had about a 3.5 month period of training to build up to that, whereas Lionel's trying to do it in less than half that time. In addition to that, then we have to look at who he is potentially going up against in Mont Tremblant. We don't necessarily know. But how pro Kona slots are awarded now is you have to either win a race or be one of the highest finishing athletes who doesn't already have a spot. Of course, Lionel is going to be likely the most talented athlete to step up to that start line. Issue is for him at Mont Tremblant is that Mont Tremblant doesn't tend to attract athletes that are like A-level professionals who already have a spot. It's more like the B and C level athletes who don't have a spot, so there's less likelihood of a spot rolling down. So for him to get a spot, I imagine he's got to win, finish second or third. And on just 6 weeks of training, does he have the talent to do that? Yeah, he's one of the most talented athletes around, but that's placing a really big load and expectations on his body at a time where he's talking about overtraining, nutritional issues, vitamin D deficiencies, which all kind of also leads to an inability to really load on a lot of training and recover quickly. So do I think that he is going to qualify for Kona? It's hard to say and really depends on who else shows up at the race in Mont Tremblant and who is actually going to accept their spots. So does he have the ability to do it? Yes, of course. Is it going to happen? Don't know. A bigger question to me, though, with all of this is, can he come back mentally from what's happened over the past year? We've always seen Lionel have setbacks that he's very open about, that he blogs about, that he creates videos about, and he's always taken them as a part of the journey and as part of the learning process. But what we saw in 2018 with Kona is that it wasn't a learning process for him. He looked at it as he was ready to win. He learned everything that he needed to learn, and he put so much emphasis on winning Kona in 2018 that when he had a bad performance, I think the mental shock of that is probably harder to come back from than the physical shock of this fracture. I don't know the guy well enough to say what sort of mental state that he's in at all, so I'm not even going to comment on that, but that's one thing that I wonder about, certainly more than the stress fracture. Does he have the physical ability to come back and potentially win Kona multiple times after this? Of course, it's a broken bone. People recover from broken bones all the time. Can he do it with the mental side of things that have arisen from not doing well in Kona in 2018? Bigger question. Can he do it under the potential hormonal and body stress that it seems like he might be going through? That's also a bigger question. A broken bone is easy, but it's all these things that are around it that lead to bigger challenges. And when you're dealing with trying to be the best of the best of the best, you've got to have a lot of this stuff in place. So that's more what I question. Sorry, Trainiacs, that is my take on what Lionel's going through. Of course, I don't know him. I don't know the exact situation that he's in. I'm not even a doctor. I just play one on the internet. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight that you can take away to sort of package up where he might be at and what you can do to avoid and understand these injuries. All right. If you aren't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button below. Pete would love if you subscribed. Right, Pete? He always does. Later.